Welcome, GCSE teachers. Thank you for navigating here, and whether you navigate here as part of the mini course or as part of the larger 3-hour professional development course, I welcome you and hope that you find the information on Google Forms useful and find ways to further integrate Google Forms into your classroom. Just a quick review before I begin, and I like to do this with all the Google Docs suite of apps, and that is to talk about the cloud. You may have heard the term cloud-based computing used before. That can be confusing to some people, but really the cloud is just the internet. What it does is it allows us to create a document on any device, and it allows us to save that document onto the internet so that it is not physically saved on your hard drive or on a flash drive. It is saved on the internet, and then you can access it on any device, and you can edit it and modify it and change it. So that if I create a document on my computer, I can save it onto the internet, into the cloud. I can then access it from my iOS device, such as my iPad, or from my phone if I have an Android operating device. I can use any of those 3 operating devices. It looks very similar. I don't have any issues with compatibility. It works on all the devices. I can share it with anybody who has any of those devices and others. This is really what makes Google Docs unique. When Google Docs first came onto the scene about 9-10 years ago, they were really the leaders and really the only people that allowed this sort of collaboration. Others have since jumped on board, but Google Docs is really still the leader. This is why we push Google Docs, because right now we have Windows-based laptops for teachers, and the students have iOS iPads, obviously not laptops, iOS iPads. However, if we are to change devices in the future, anything that you create on Google Docs will be accessible from all of those and future devices that we have not yet been created or established. So that's the advantage of Google Docs over something, say, like Word or Pages, which don't have that level of compatibility. Google Docs has that. Those other products do not. The term Google Docs itself can be a little confusing for some people because Google Docs refers to 2 things. It refers to the entire suite of apps that includes forms, which we'll talk about today, obviously, drawing, slides, docs, and sheets. The confusion obviously comes from Docs right here, which is the word processing application, and that is also called Google Docs. So you have Google Docs, which is a word processing application nested within a larger suite of products called Google Docs, which includes all 5 of the productivity apps. Today we're going to be discussing Forms, obviously, which is one of the productivity apps, but is very unique. And again, other people have since tried to catch up, but Google was certainly the leader in creating an online form system that was free and easy to use for people who had Google accounts. Though Google Forms is one product, I really think that it has 2 very divergent and different paths. One of those is to gather input and collect data, and the other is to create a quiz. Because these are so different, I would like to separate these out in the video today and talk about them separately, and I will give examples of how to create each one and talk about that in a separate section of the video. Really, the original purpose of Google Forms was this, but so many teachers jumped on board and started using it for quizzes that Google actually now realized that and started catering to the education market, and has an entire way that you can set up a Google form as a quiz. So I will talk about these 2 paths because I think they are different enough and divergent enough in their interests and their goals that we should do that. There are 4 parts to today's video, actually 5 if you count this introductory presentation, but 4 that cover the specific use of Google Forms. So the first one is simply going to be a review a little bit and an overview of Google Forms. I will talk about things like settings, each question type, how to insert an image, how to insert a video, how to insert a section, how to add collaborators, and how to share your form with those who you would like to respond. That's kind of the first basic introductory overview part, is part 1. Part 2, I will talk specifically about how to create a form that is used for a survey or for gathering data. And in part 3, I will talk about the specifics for creating a quiz. So those 2, again, will be delineated out because I think they are different enough. Part 4, I will talk about managing responses. So whether you have people respond to your quiz or to your survey, the response and the way you manage them are similar enough that I'm going to talk about that together. But I do think that in terms of creation, they are different enough that we should talk about those separately in parts 2 and 3. One last slide here on the introduction of Google Forms, and that is that really Google Forms really has an uncounted number of applications in education. As I mentioned, it was not necessarily originally created for education, but Google started to see how many teachers were using it in their class, and it now really has a whole aspect of it that is catered to education in general. Like all members of the Google Apps suite, it is device agnostic, as I talked about when I talked about the cloud, meaning that no matter what device we ever have or use, Google Forms will be accessible and will be usable. So you don't have to worry about creating something in Google Forms and then not having it accessible, because it will be made to be accessible with any device that we would ever have. And as you are aware, if you complete a mini course, you get a mini badge placed outside of your room. It will look like this. If you complete the 3-hour professional development course, you will get the full-size badge, and it will have all of the Google Docs suite of apps as opposed to just the Forms logo here in the corner. So in order to get the mini course badge, of course, you must take the quiz that is linked in the description section down below in this YouTube video. If you're doing the 3-hour professional development course, obviously everything is laid out in Canvas for you there, and you can continue on, and there will be some projects and some assessments you have to take in order to earn your badge at that point. Okay, at this point I'm going to wrap up the presentation, and I will start the next section and jump into some real-life demonstration and some practice for how to go about creating a basic form. Welcome to the first section covering the actual use of Google Forms. Hopefully you learned a little bit in the introduction that will be useful to you. And now I'd like to give you some real world practice as to how to set up your form. If you've already set up forms in the past, that's great, but Google has recently revamped the entire Forms application. So I feel that it is important to cover a lot of these basic things that you may have done before, but now look slightly different or are often found in different locations. As always, if you want to start a form, there are two ways. You can simply go to your Google Drive, go to New, and go to More, and then go to Google Forms. It will create a form there. If you want to create a blank form that is really kind of your own mold, however you want to mold the form, that's the way to go, certainly. If you want to create a blank form and you want to customize it and you want to mold it however you want, I would create one from there. You can also go to forms.google.com. I know mine says docs.google.com, but if you type forms.google.com, it will automatically reroute you here. And often in the other videos, you've heard me talk about how the fact that I like to start from Drive because I believe that Drive allows me to better organize things and put them in hierarchy, and I really like things to be organized in folders, but that's really a personal preference of mine. However, for Forms, I do believe that the forms.google.com is probably the better way to start if you want a pre-made template and how to start and use that and fill that in. Simply using a pre-made template is a great way to use Google Forms, and if you want one of those, this is definitely the better way to start. This has, pre-designed course evaluations, exit tickets, assessments, worksheets. There are personal things, such as collecting contact information, RSVP, party invites. There are also work-related things for time off requests, all that. But if you want the education-related things, which is really what Google has started to customize Forms toward, those options are available here. And if you want a blank quiz, you can click here. If you just want a blank document, you can click here. Whereas if I go to Google Forms, I'm going to get the blank Google form every time when I create that. So if you'd rather go automatically into quiz mode, once I've shown you how to do that, you could certainly do that from here. I'm going to start with just the blank slate because I want to show you all of the options and not have those things pre-made as are done here. But once you understand the basics and you know how to go about using Google Forms, you may in fact want to start from here and use the templates and simply edit the templates that Google has available for you. For demonstration purposes and how to show you everything from the very beginning, I'm simply going to create a blank Google form, and I'm going to do that by going to New and then More and then Google Forms. Of course, I get the option, do I want to create a shared folder? I do want to do that, even though I haven't shared that folder with anyone at this time, but as we talked about in the Google Drive and Google Docs overview, it will automatically default to that because Greencastle Schools, as a Google school, has a setting set up so that folders default to sharing, that anyone with the email address can access that. Okay, so I have my new form. The first thing I want to show you, obviously, is it defaults to a kind of purple screen. Again, we've set that up as the default because of the fact that we have schools. Purple is our school color, and we are a Google application school, so we thought that was a good fit. If you don't like that purple, which is perfectly fine, if you don't, you can simply click on the color palette right here. You have a number of color options, so if I want to have this really odd green there, I could do that. And if I click on a color, it's obviously going to change that. If I'd rather have what is called a theme, I can go down to the bottom right here. I can click on theme, and it's going to take me to the section here where I can choose from pre-made themes. So if I want an illustration, I can do that. If I want, obviously here's work and school. If I can choose something there, I can do that. Obviously, some of these things we're not going to use, but if you wanted to use them for like a wedding RSVP, or you had a party you wanted to plan on a personal level on your personal Gmail account, you can use all of these things as well. So all of these things are available to you, and they are there. These can be used in place of like an Evite. Google is trying to capture that market as well. So I think Google's doing some really unique and good things here. I'm just going to stick with work and school. I'm going to find one that works for me here. I like the purple. It's not such a bland purple. It's just the plain purple background, but still has our school colors and has a little bit of design to it. Common question I get, I like this background, but I'd rather it be the blue. Can I just go up here and click on the blue? No, as you see, that's going to take it back just to blue. So right now, as it stands, you cannot edit the themes that Google has. So if I choose a picture, I simply have to go with the color that Google gives me with that picture. I cannot change the individual color of that theme. Okay, of course, with all Google Docs, you want to name that. So I'm just going to call this my example form. And you can do that by clicking up here in the upper left-hand corner and naming that, just as you've done with other Google Docs, I'm sure. I want to cover the settings after we now have a form that has a name and we have chosen our background theme. I'm going to go to settings, which are found in the gear here. You will notice there are 3 tabs. There's the general tab, the presentation tab, and the quizzes tab. Some of these are new. Google, as I mentioned, Google Forms is completely revamped within the last few months, and some of these tabs are new, and I want to run through all of the options that are here. So under general, you have collect email addresses, and that does exactly what it says. If you click that, it will collect the email address of everyone who responds to your form. If you would like to send the people who respond to your form a receipt, you can click the option here. And then you have the option if the respondent requests it or always. So this comes in handy for things like a quiz. If a student takes it and you select always, then that student is going to get an email and you can verify that they have in fact turned their quiz in. You know, if they say, well, I don't think I submitted that, have them check their email. They should have obviously a receipt there. So you can turn the collect email addresses on, you can turn the receipt request on. That's however you would like to do that when you set up your form. You have a couple of options here about requiring a sign-in. You can restrict it to GCSE users, which I would highly recommend because you're going to be sharing your form online. However, when you share online, the only people who will be able to access it if you have this selected are those of us in GCSE. If you are doing something obviously on your own for personal use, you could uncheck that option. You would not have that option actually on your personal Gmail. You can limit to 1 response. I often found this useful in the classroom because students would submit it, and if it didn't go, they'd hit submit again, and sometimes you would get 2 or 3 responses from the same student, and you would have to sort those out in terms of their quizzes. So I like to have that turned on, but again, that's a personal preference. There are options here. So after it is submitted, respondents can actually edit their submission. So that comes in handy if you're collecting data or if you're gathering information, not so handy for a quiz unless you're maybe doing a mastery quiz or something. But if you're gathering data and they want to know a time they can meet and their schedule changes, obviously they want to be able to go back and edit that. You can select the edit after submit button. This is see summary charts and text responses. That allows everyone when they hit the submit button and they turn their information, they will see a summary so that if you ask for a meeting time and you want AM or PM, and they're going to see that 55% of people prefer the AM meeting as opposed to the PM meeting. They're not going to necessarily see everyone's individual responses, but they're going to see a summary of what have been submitted. And if you have open-ended text responses, they are going to see a snapshot of those. So they will see some of the things that people type directly in terms of their open-ended text responses. So again, those options are entirely up to you under general. There's several things there that are useful, some that are not as useful, but I think it's important to know all of those before you start in on your first form. Presentation is the second tab. We have several options here as well. Show the progress bar. What that will do if this is selected, at the bottom of the screen, it will show how far along in the process students are or individuals are that are completing your form or completing your quiz. That comes in useful if you have only 1 question per page, or if you have multiple pages, it will show them how far along they are. If you just have everything on 1 page, that is a moot point because it will not show the bar at all because everything is on 1 page. Shuffle the question order does just what it says. It shuffles the questions so that question 1, and if you have 5-question quiz, they're going to be all jumbled up and you're not going to know who's in what order. That comes in obviously handy for a quiz, not as handy if you're gathering data. If you want people to submit more than 1 response, you can show a link. They can click on that and it will just take them back and it will show them the link to submit the next response. I used that a lot when I was teaching middle school science for lab reports and things. You know, if you were gathering data and you had to gather data every 30 seconds and I wanted students to input it into the form, then they would have to submit another response. So I did use that quite a bit when I was doing something like that. Obviously, if you're doing a quiz, probably wouldn't want to do that, or a test, wouldn't want to do that. But that option is available to you to show the link to submit another response. The confirmation message is what students or whoever's completing your form will see once they've hit the submit button. I like to customize this, but if you don't customize it, it will simply say your response has been recorded, and that way they will know they have turned in their form and their submission. The final tab are quizzes, and you will notice right away this is a little bit different because everything is grayed out. Because in order to turn a Google form into a quiz, you have to select the option right here that allows you to make that a quiz. If you don't click that button right there, Google is going to assume that you don't want this to be a quiz, you just want it to be a general information gathering sort of form. So by clicking this, you are making it a quiz, and by doing that, you are automatically assigning a point total and auto grading to every question. Every question that is not a name or period, something like that. You can turn the point value to 0 if you want, but there will be a point value assigned to every question, and there will be auto grading for every question as well. Once you've turned on the quiz option, you can choose the option of whether you would like to release the grade immediately to the students, or if you would like to after manual submission. That will turn on the email collection so that after you have manually reviewed everything, you can email the grades to the students. So you don't have to have the collect email address on in order to email them later. And you have options here. Allow the respondents to see the questions they missed, allow them to see the correct answers, allow them to see the point value. And as you can see, there's a little, if you forget any of these options, there's a question mark bubble here that will tell you, click on that, just hold your mouse over it, if I can get it to stay there, will tell you what that is describing. And so you can turn on the point values so that respondents can see that, or the correct answers. Those are entirely up to you. Obviously, as you customize and create your own quizzes, you're going to find out which of those options are important and which are not. I'm going to turn the make it this quiz option off for right now. When I get to the third section where I talk specifically about quizzes, I will dive more into those options then. So for now, I'm simply going to hit save. I didn't really change anything there. Just went through them, and I'm going to go back to the main form. Now you will notice right here, this is my example form that I'm going to use. So in my form description right here, I can type a description of what I want people to know. This could be the description of the directions of how I want them to complete it. And it defaults and just gives me one question. Notice that there is a drop down here. I have multiple types of questions that I can use. And I'm going to go through each one of these and kind of describe them. Some of them will just take a couple of seconds. Some of them will take a little bit longer. Notice I can turn on the question, make it the question required. I can duplicate the question if I want. I can also click here, and that allows me to shuffle the option order within. So if I want to have A, B, and C, and I want those to be individually shuffled, then I can select that. So I can shuffle both the question order and the options within the question. And I can also show a description. If this question has a very specific set of instructions, I can show a description for that, or I can turn that off. And I can also go to a section based on answer. I will talk more about that as we get a little bit more into the advanced section. I believe it's 3 or 4. Okay, so for right now, I'm going to start with the most basic type of question, which is, of course, a multiple choice question. This allows you, just like it says, to add choice A, choice B, and if I click add option, I can type in here choice C. So I have 3 choices there, and just a multiple choice question. Obviously, it gives me a radio button. The person who is completing the form will be able to choose the one they want. Notice I have the option right here to click on picture. I can insert a picture for any of the options that I would like. So if I want choice A to have a picture, choice B to have a picture, choice C to have a picture, I simply click on the picture here, and I can upload that. I can also insert a video by clicking the add video option right here. So if I wanted to put a video in, I could put a YouTube video in, and then I could have a question based on that YouTube video. So I could put the YouTube video in. I'll just put one in here. And let's see what I get when I search for Greencastle. Okay, if I want to put this video in here, and then I could drag that video up, and then I could ask a question based on that video. So I could have, change this to video question. And now I have choices A, B, and C after I've watched the video. In this case, I would probably want to turn on the description and say, be sure to watch the video above before answering this question. Okay, so that's a quick overview. I could obviously title this question 1 video. So it's a quick overview of some of the basic options for a multiple choice question, along with some of the options you'll see for all the other questions, but I'm not necessarily going to go through all of those since we now know how to do them, such as insert the video or insert the picture. I want to add another question. I'm going to click the plus button here to add a question. And this time I'm going to make a checkbox option. And notice it has put it in the wrong place. I put it in between my video and my picture, so I'm simply going to drag that by the 6 dots there, and I'm going to drag it down below. This is the select all that apply question. And so again, if I have multiple choices, but this time it's going to allow me to select as many as I want. So if I can select A, B, and C, I will be able to select A, B, and C. Again, I can add a picture or a video as needed if I wanted to do that. Again, I can make the question required. If I want to duplicate the question so that I want to ask the same question again, but I simply want to add, say, a choice D, I could duplicate that question, and it is going to duplicate the question, and it is now going to, I could add choice D. I don't want to do that right now because I just want to show you each type of question, so I can hit delete here and it will delete that entire question. Notice I can undo that if I choose to until I go on to the next command. So I have the option to undo, if I accidentally delete something, I can undo that until I go on to the next command. So I'm going to add a question in here, and this time instead of a multiple choice or a checkbox, I'm going to do a drop down. This is very similar to the checkbox, to the multiple choice question, except for this time the options will appear as a drop down to the students instead of a radio button. So you still only have one correct answer that you can choose from, but you have them as appear as a drop down as opposed to a click button. So essentially the same thing. The advantage is obviously it limits the choices that are visible there, but you can do basically the same thing. Again, you can make it required, you can duplicate it, you can delete it, you can add a description, you can shuffle the order. All of those apply to every question. Add a picture as well. Sorry, you cannot add a picture on the dropdown. My apologies, you cannot add a picture on the dropdown. Okay, the next question I am going to do is a short answer. This is just as it says. It allows a very brief text. All it is going to show the students is this little area of the box right here. So this is designed for 1 2-word answer sort of questions. And I can do data validation here. So let's say that I want students to be able to enter a number. I can click on the number and it has to be within, say, the number has to be greater than 5. And so that way if someone enters, anything less than that, I can say, sorry, your answer must be larger than 5. If I wanted to make it a text, again, I can do this. This gets a little bit trickier, but I can, if I want to if it has to contain certain words, I can put those in there as well. So there is some data validation in terms of using short answers. This comes in handy for, say, a math class or some sort of formula that you would have to be putting in or some number. It gets a little bit trickier with actual written answers, but you can attempt to work with that on the text. Okay, the next type of question are the paragraph questions. These are your typical long response questions. And this is where it may come in handy to have a description, because obviously, again, you may want to describe what it is you want people to answer here with longer text. And you could also put that in the actual question itself. That would be up to you how you want to set that up. You can, again, do data validation here. This gets a little bit trickier because it's a long response. The students will see, or the respondent, whoever it will be, sees an entire box of text that they have here, not just one line. So I typically don't like the data validation for the longer responses because it's more of a free response, more of a qualitative response, where they're putting their thoughts down and they're describing all of those options or those thoughts they have that go along with the question. Okay, the next type of question that I want to cover is a linear scale. Linear scale is what we call a linear scale or a Likert scale, although I don't think this is a true Likert scale because you can't label everything. So notice you only have 1 and 5. So if 1 is strongly agree, and 5 is strongly disagree, you have to assume that the person is going to know that 3 is neutral, that 2 is agree, and that 4 is disagree. You can't label everything on the individual scale. So I personally don't like the linear scale. I wish they gave you the option to label what 1 through 5 is. You can do anywhere up to 1 through 10, but I'm not a huge fan of this question type on Google Forms, honestly, because of that. You may find it useful, and that's great if you do. It's just not one that I use very often because I don't like the fact that it doesn't differentiate between it doesn't really tell you what 2 and 5 are, and to me it's not a true linear scale because of that. Sorry, I guess my stats professor in college would be proud that I that I went on that spiel, but I just don't like it because of that. Okay, I'm going to add a question here, and the next question is a multiple choice grid. This is one that I do find very useful for the most part, and there are some drawbacks to this, of course, just like anything. But I can have row 1. So like, let's say I wanted to have Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and I wanted before school, like let's say I wanted to set up a club meeting or after school. I can have the students respond. If I want to allow them to respond 1 time per row, in fact, if I want to require them to respond 1 time per row, I can click that option. Now, for a meeting time, that might not be the best because maybe they can't meet on Tuesday at all, so they don't want to reply anytime for Tuesday, but maybe they can meet Monday before school and Wednesday after school. They can select those options. You could put a can't meet at all that day, and then you could turn on the require 1 response per row, but there are ways to play around with that. And again, the options here are to limit to 1 response per column. The next type of question I'm going to add is the date. And what that literally allows you to do is to input a date. And the other similar question is to input the time. And that allows you, just as I said, to input the time, and you can also change that to duration. So if you wanted it to be 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever, as opposed to one specific time, then you can do that as well. I forgot to show you the options for date and year, which are simply just to include the time. So you can combine date and time. I'll change this one to time. Those are the basic question types. And just real quick before I go on, I want to show you how to preview your form so that you know what it looks like. So I'm going to go to preview right here, and that takes me to the website. So in this case, I have the example form. I have will be the description of the directions here. Remember, I had the question 1 video. There was the multiple choice. So in this one, I could select one of the radio buttons. This is the select all that apply option. So I could select which one of those I want. Drop down allows me to choose one of the options available. The short answer, notice, is just a very small response area here. This is a larger response area, and in fact, as you type here, as you go on each line, it will add to the line, so you see a much larger response area there. The linear scale, which is the one that I didn't like very well because it only showed me 1 and 5, but you can choose one of the options here. The multiple choice grid, notice that I can choose Monday before school, Tuesday after school, Wednesday after school, so it allows me to select multiple times and inputs. I did not choose the option here. You can choose the option, though, to turn on so that 1 response is required per row. Date simply gives me a calendar and allows me to choose a date that I think is going to be important or needed, and then the time is going to allow me to input the time. And then when I hit submit, obviously my form will be response will be recorded. I'm not going to do that right now because we're not ready for that, but that's just a quick overview of all the question types and what they would look like and how you would access the preview. In order to go back and edit, you're going to click on the pencil right here. I am going to leave this because I don't want to make the changes. It's going to take me back to the original form. I've covered all the basic questions and how to input video and how to input pictures. I do want to show you a few things here, which are how to insert a section. This allows for really, in my opinion, interesting and detailed forms, or if you input a section. So this is the add a section right here. So I can add a new section to my form, and what that's going to do, notice that it now has 2 sections. So I have section 1 and section 2. I probably didn't put that in the best place, though. Let's say that I don't like that as well. I can go merge with above. So now I have my 2 sections that are merged into 1 section. Let's go ahead and try to add a section again here, but now I'm going to add it at the bottom. Okay, so I can do several things with this. I'm going to call this my second section. What I can do, I can, like let's say on my multiple choice question, I want to be able to, if somebody answers choice C, I want them to skip directly to the second section. So I go to choice C here and I go to second section. And then anyone taking the survey or the quiz or the form, however I have it laid out, if they answer choice C there, will automatically skip the rest of the questions and they will go down here to the second section. And I can then have an entirely new question here and see it. Google automatically recognizes some questions and will actually give you the options for them. Sometimes it will do that for true false questions as well. So I now have two sections, and that if I click on choice C above, it will take me to this section of the quiz. And I can do the same thing again. So if I went at a third section, I could do that as well. And I can also, if they say no, I can have them, or if they say no or maybe, it will go automatically to submit the form. And I can have them continue to the next section. In this case, I don't have a next section, so everybody would go to submit the form as well. So in this case, let's look at the preview again. And let's say that I'm going to select, I believe it was choice C here. And if I hit next, notice it's going to take me not to the end of the form, but it's going to take me to the second section so that I can then choose the option that I want. So basically a section is a page. It allows me to put multiple pages in my form, and it allows me to link various questions to various other questions. So you can have yes, no, yes goes one place, no goes another place. I mean, I've seen forms that have 10, 12, 15 sections easily that you can have those based on the responses. It gets a little tricky to manage, but it's a lot of fun to have that situation and that scenario where you can guide students to different locations or respondents to different locations based on the answer that they provide. If I have a section that I don't like let's say I look at this and I just think, this is not really a section that I want. I can, sorry, let me go back here and edit this form. I'm going to leave there. Okay, let's say that I don't like the second section. I decide I don't need that anymore. I just click here and I go to delete section, and section is deleted. There's lots you can do with sections. That really is just scratching the surface. Like I said, you can link them. You can have responses go back and forth based on answers. It gets a little tricky sometimes if you get a lot of sections, but I think it can be really useful and has some neat applications. Just to wrap up this basic overview, the last thing I will say is that you can add a collaborator. Now, do not get confused. Adding a collaborator is in a Google form is not the people who you want to view your form and submit answers. These are people who you want to edit and help create. So you are going to click add collaborators, and if I wanted to have another teacher work on this with me, I would share this link with them. They would not be the person who I want to input the data. They would be the person who I want to help edit the form with me. So that's a distinction. I've had some people ask questions about that I really wanted to make clear. Make sure if you add a collaborator, you know that's someone you want to edit with, not someone you want to respond with. Okay, that wraps up the basic information about the new Google Forms. And in the next section, I will be covering how to create a survey. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll talk to you in the next section about how to complete a survey. Welcome back, Google Forms students. Hopefully in the last section you learned some of the basics about Google Forms. In this section I'm going to complete a very simple survey and show you some of the steps that you would go through to combine the information in the last portion of the video in order to create an example survey. Remember, the surveys are very different from how they're set up than the quizzes, so I do want to break those down into two different sections. You may remember last time I mentioned the virtue of going to forms.google.com, and that is a great way to start your form if you want to have a template that allows you to simply go and tweak and edit what others have done in terms of their examples and what Google has done here for their forms. However, for this one, I want one that is a blank slate that I can mold in the way I want. So in order to do that, I'm going to start from drive.google.com, and I'm going to go to New, and then More, and then Google Forms. Yes, I want to create it in a shared folder. The first thing I want to do is I want to give my form a name. I can do that one of two ways, by clicking here or by clicking here. Should automatically update either way, but if I click up here, I'm going to call this an example survey. Once I click, it changes the name at the bottom. Again, if I want to give some description here, so that my respondents know exactly what they are going to complete, I can do that. Remember, of course, if I go to the settings button, which is the gear, I have numerous options here. I am going to restrict it to Greencastle Community School Corporation users, and I am going to not collect email addresses. I am not going to allow people to edit after they submit, and I am going to click on presentation. I am going to change a couple of things here. I'm going to show the link to submit another response, and I'm going to do that because it'll make my demonstration easier so that I can do 2 or 3 responses and show you how it works. I'm going to edit the confirmation message, and I'm going to say, thank you for completing this survey and assisting with our fundraiser. In my example here, it's going to be a time that people could work for a fundraiser. Okay, I'm going to save that. Now, this is going to be a very simple survey. What I'm going to have is 2 questions, a name and whether they can work or not. And if they can work or not, that'll take me to a second section where they will choose an AM or a PM session. So it'll show us sections, it'll show us how to add a question, how to make it required, how to go to a section based on the answer of a previous question. Okay, so the first question is going to be simply the name of the person who is submitting the response. I want to make that a short answer, clearly, not a multiple choice. I am going to make that required by clicking the button there. I don't need to add any extra descriptions or data validation for that. I'm going to add another question, and this is going to be, can you work at the fundraiser on Saturday? Notice again, Google wants to auto-populate by yes, no, and maybe. I don't want yes. I'm sorry, I do want yes, I do want no, I do not want maybe. So I could do one, I could add all, and then I could delete maybe, or I could simply type yes and no in on my own. So I'm going to leave yes and no right there. I'm going to make this question required as well. Obviously, if people are completing my survey, I want them to be able to answer that question. Now, what I want to know is, though, if people answer yes, what time can they work? Can they work the AM session or can they work the PM session? So I would need to know that. If the answer is no, that's great. They just submit their form and they go on with life, and they don't help with our fundraiser, and that's fine. So I'm going to add a section here, and in this section, I'm going to call this, give it a name, I'm going to call it the yes section. And again, I can add a description if I want, so I will just for demonstration purposes. This section is for those people who are able to volunteer. Okay, I'm going to add a question here. And this question is going to be for the people who answered yes, what session best fits your schedule? And I'm going to just have a morning option here, and then I'm going to have an afternoon option. And I probably would want to put some times with that, so we'll call this, 9 to noon, and this will be noon to 3. Okay. I do need to add, I'm going to make that required as well. However, I want to go back here, and I want to add an option now that I have that in place. I'm going to click the 3 dots here. I'm going to choose the option go to section based on answer. So if people answer yes, I want them to go to the yes section. If they answer no, I want them to go directly to the point where they submit the form, because obviously they would not need to see the yes section. And you could make this much more complicated, obviously, have many sections, but I just want to give you a quick example of how to jump between sections and how to see the form displayed in 2 different sections. Okay, so now I have a form that's ready to go. I'm going to go through the responses and show you some of how that would look. Before I do that, I want to do one other thing. I'm going to go back to settings here, and I am going to choose the option under presentation that shows the progress bar, just because we haven't looked at that yet. And that will show you how far along in the survey you are and how many pages you have to complete. So now I have my survey, it's ready to go. And in order to view the website version of that, I'm going to click the preview button here, which is looks like the eye. And that takes me to the website version. For future reference, if you want to share that, you simply left click and you copy the address here, and then you paste that into wherever you want the link to be. So it could be in an email, it could be in a QR code if you want to take students there, it could be in your Canvas page, it can be any number of ways, but that's how you actually share the survey or the quiz, both, for the people who you want to have respond to the question. So if I wanted to email this out to a group of parents, I could simply take that web address, I could go to my Gmail, copy that address in there, have them click on the link, and it will take them there. So in this example, I'm just going to put my name is test 1, and notice here's the progress bar, tells me I'm on page 1 of 2. So Test 1 cannot work on the fundraiser, so if I've done this correctly, I should automatically be taken to the page to submit the form when I hit next. And you can see that I am, and it tells me I'm on page 2 of 2, and I hit submit, and now I'm going to hit submit another response just to simply make life easy on myself and not have to go back and retype all of that in or copy and paste the web address. So this is going to be test 2, the name of this person, and yes, this person can work on Saturday. Notice again the progress bar is here. I'm going to hit next, and this person can work on the morning session, which then should take me to the submit form. And I will hit submit response. And just so I want to verify, in fact, that all 3 of the possible outcomes and options work, I'm going to choose yes that I can work again. And this time I'm going to choose the afternoon session, and I'll hit submit. And now when I go back to my form, I'm not going to submit another response, but when I go back to my form, oops, wrong spot, I'm sorry. When I go back to my form right here, I should notice that there are 3 responses. And if I click there, we'll talk more about this in the response section, but they are there and they're able to be viewed. So I know that the people have completed my survey as I wanted them to. So that's kind of a quick and brief overview of how to create a very basic survey. If you have any questions, let me know. In the next section, I will cover some of the same ideas, but except this time put them in quiz form. Welcome back, Google Forms students. In this section, I'm going to complete a very simple quiz and show you the steps that would be necessary in order for you to put the information in the general overview section together in order to create a quiz. Again, I've talked a couple of times in this video about the virtues of forms.google.com. Certainly that's a good option, probably when you have a little bit more under your belt and you know exactly what you want to do in terms of editing a quiz that has already been created for you. For now, I'm going to create the one that allows me to mold that and put it where I want, and also I can share it. Save that, not share that, save that in the location where I want in terms of folders. So I'm going to create a new Google form, as I've done before in the video a couple of times, except for this time is instead of an example survey or just an example, it is going to be an example quiz, and I'm going to name that. I'm going to click on the gear option right here, and I am going to make sure that I go to quizzes first of all, and I'm going to make this a quiz, and I will release the grades immediately after submission. I would want to do later after manual review if I had some type of long open-ended response which required me to grade that, because the computer will not grade that. It will grade multiple choice questions. It will grade checkbox questions, that sort of thing. It will not, however, obviously grade a lengthy question that you would need to manually review yourself. So I'm going to just do it for simplicity's sake. I am going to do just a multiple choice question, keeping in mind that you would need to experiment with the manual review and the open-ended questions if you were going to do that. I'm going to allow responses to see all of the point values, correct answers, missed questions, and such. So I'm going to leave that, and I am going to, instead of a confirmation message, your response has been recorded, I'm going to put thank you for taking the quiz, or completing the quiz more correctly, I guess. And I am not going to collect email addresses, though that can be beneficial for a quiz, especially with students if they forget to put their name on something, or even if they put, if they typed in something silly for their name, you could automatically collect their email address. So I'm not going to for demonstration purposes, but you could do that. I would like to limit to 1 response though, because I don't want students to be able to answer more than 1 time. And I am going to save that. And now it doesn't look like much has changed, but I will show that there are a number of options that have in fact changed within the quiz itself. So in the description, I'm going to put just a quick summary of the quiz and the directions really. So this would just be a spot again where you type your directions. Obviously, they could be as detailed or not that you needed them. So in this case, they're very simplistic. I'm going to create, a question's already been created for me. It is a multiple choice question, clearly. In this one, I want to demonstrate how to use the picture feature. So I'm going to make this a visual question. Which of these is the flag of the United States? And so for my options, instead of having an option for text, obviously, I'm going to click on the picture, and I'm just going to do a search, and I'm going to search for the American flag. And just don't want the upside down one. So I like the picture one the best. Actually, let's go with the drawing. I like that one. Okay, those are all in the public domain, so I don't need to worry about that. And I can insert text here if I want. So in this case, that it probably would be good since it doesn't have it just says option 1. I could leave it as A or leave it as B or C. So I'm just going to just call it A, and I'm going to add an option here, and I'm going to put a picture in. And so again, I'll do a search, and this time let's do Canadian flag. And to keep it similar, I'll choose a drawing instead of actual picture. Okay, and I need a third option just for sake here, and let's go with the Brazilian flag. Maybe I should have flag of Brazil. And there we go. Okay, and I'm going to call that choice C. Okay, so the students will see, which of these is the flag of the United States. They'll have A, B, or C. They'll be able to choose based on the visual option there. I'm going to make that question required because I want every student to answer that question. Now, notice if I click the 3 dots here, I still have the go to section option, which I could do. I can still do that for quizzes. I can shuffle the option order, so if I don't want all students to see the flags in the correct order, I can do that. So I'm going to choose that so that they see the flags in different order. And I could show the description if I wanted to have specific instructions for that question. I'm going to click on the answer key. I'm going to make this question worth 1 point. And obviously, A is going to be the correct answer. And now I can add feedback. So for incorrect answers, I'm going to say, sorry, that is incorrect. And for correct answers, okay, so just a little feedback for the students. Notice I can't include a link, which is nice if I wanted to. I could include a link to a website and have text to display. So if I want to say, like, if I wanted to go to, say, an entry on the American flag from a US government site or Wikipedia site or something, I could paste the link there, and then I could have click here for the right answer, and the students could click there and get a bit of brief overview about the flag. I'm not going to do that, but it is there for you to use. Okay, so that's question 1. Notice it shows me the feedback, and if I want to edit that question, I would need to click right here in order to edit that question. In the second question, I'm just going to create 3 questions here for the quiz, and in this one, what year did the Chicago Cubs last win the World Series? Okay, my choices are 1908, 1945, and 2016. Okay, so I'm not going to put any pictures here. I'm going to make this a required question as well. I'm going to choose the answer key, which of course, as of the time we are speaking right now, is 1908. I'm going to make that worth 1 point. I'm going to add my answer feedback, and I'm going to say incorrect for the correct answers. I'm going to say correct, but I hope by the time you view this answer, the correct answer will be 2016. Okay. And oops, I forgot to put for the incorrect question. I don't have to put anything here if I don't want to. I simply would not choose that option. And again, I'll show you the link here very quickly just to see that. So enter feedback incorrect. Sorry, that answer is incorrect. Hopefully I didn't jinx the Cubs by putting that on there. So let's just say I want to find some more information about the 1908 World Series. So I'm going to go to Wikipedia, and I'm going to copy that link here, find a little bit more information about that. So I'm going to click the link here, and text to display, click here to read more. Okay. And so now, if they answer that incorrectly, they will have the option to select the link to read more about the answer. I'm going to add one more question. Okay. Great spell. I don't need the period there. Okay. And so if I wanted to do pictures of those three, I could. I'm going to make it a required question. I'm going to choose my answer key. That correct answer for that is igneous. I'm going to make that worth 1 point. I can make those worth any point total that I want. I didn't say that earlier, but I can do that. And I am going to, this time I'm going to leave that blank just because to show you that you don't necessarily need to do that. You may notice there is one thing that is missing from this quiz, and that is obviously a spot for my name. So if I want to, let's say I've forgotten that, I want to go back and I'm going to drag this question back up to the top right below the example. I'm going to change it to a short answer, and I'm going to have the students put their name there. Again, you wouldn't even need necessarily have to have the students put their name there if you chose the to collect their email address. Obviously, I want to make this question required so that every student has to answer that. I'm going to make it worth 0 points, so I don't need an answer key there. And let's say I want to add one more question. I want to have them put a period number on there. And let's say that I want this to be a drop down. I can make this first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth. Okay. And again, I want to make that question required as well. These sort of questions come in handy. Obviously, you wouldn't need these at the elementary level, but at the secondary level, these come in handy because you can then filter the options based on periods. So when we talk about responses in the next section, I'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, so here's my 3-question quiz. I have the correct answer selected. In this last one, I did not edit the feedback. However, what I am going to do, I'm going to edit the question, and I am going to jumble the option so that I won't see the option in the correct order every time. In order to make life simple here, you would normally not do this for a quiz, I would not think, but I am going to go back to my settings, and I am going to allow myself to, I'm going to turn off limit one response, and I'm going to show a link to submit another response, just so I can show you in the demonstration what it would look like. Again, you probably wouldn't do that in the quiz, but just for demonstration purposes. Okay, I'm going to preview the quiz. And again, remember, if you want students to share this, you would copy this address. You could put it in Canvas. You could email it to them. You could put it in a QR code. You could have them type it in. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could do any of those options in terms of sharing that with the students. Okay, so here's my question. I'll go with my first period. Okay, this time I'll answer everything correctly and see what happens. And the next time I will and I can go to view my score, and it'll show me that I got a 3 out of 3 and which ones I got correct. Okay, and I'm going to go back here. I'm going to submit another response. This time I'm going to call it test 2, but I'm going to put some incorrect answers, and we'll see what happens there. If I've done everything correctly in terms of setting up the quiz, it should allow me to verify which answers were incorrect. And I should also see some feedback in terms of each question. So if I go to view my score, okay, and so see, it shows me my feedback and shows me whether the answers were correct or incorrect and what in fact are the correct answers. So that is kind of an overview of the quiz, and it shows me my point total here. Fairly simple to set up. I will do one more here just for demonstration purposes, so we have 3 for each when we look at the responses in the next section. And again, didn't do very well that time, but it shows me what were the correct answers. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of the quiz feature. If you have any questions, please let me know. And in the 4th and final section, I will show you how to take the responses and turn those into meaningful data for yourself and for the students. Welcome back, Google Forms students, to the last section of this video. In this section, I'm going to show you how to manage the responses for the form and the survey that you have created. Obviously, the first thing you would need to do is you would need to locate the form that you have created. In this case, I'm looking for my example quiz and my example survey. As I've mentioned a couple of times, I like the fact that Drive allows you to organize those as you create them, whereas if you did it through forms.google.com, they are probably just in the main portion of your drive. However, in my drive, I know they're in my tech integration folder, and then they're in my professional development courses, and then they're in my mini courses, and probably see why I like the folders now. And so I have here the example quiz, and I have the example survey. Now, in preparation for the video, I already went ahead and opened both of those, but I would need to locate those, and I would need to open them. That's how that would be the first step in managing the responses for the answers that you got for both. So looking at the example survey and the example quiz, I can see that I have responses for both of them, 4 for the quiz, 3 for the survey. The first thing I would want to do for either one of these, in order to view my responses, I'm going to click here, and I would want to make sure that the accepting responses button is turned on. If I click that, it is going to turn off, and it's not going to accept a response, so that students or any individual who had access to that site in order to answer the question on the form or on the quiz will no longer be able to do that. So that's a very important thing, is to make sure you have the accepting responses on or off, depending on if you no longer want to accept responses. So it's the same on the quiz as it is on the form, but I will leave the accepting response on for both of those, just for demonstration purposes. You always have the option of doing 2 different things with every survey and with every form. You can look at the responses in the form itself by clicking on responses, and then you can see a summary of them. So if you have summary selected right here, you can see a summary of them, and it'll tell you, test 1, test 2, test 3, the order they took them in, how many people could or could not work at the fundraiser, and whether people were more likely to work in the morning or the afternoon. If you remember, I did that one for demonstration purposes, and I did it just to see every option, so it should come out 50-50 and 2/3 and 1/3 here. I can look at the individual responses, and I can scroll through those, so I can say, okay, well, person 1 said they couldn't work, so we can skip them, and person 2 says they can, and they can work in the morning. And I can print those. I could delete a response if I wanted to, and I can look at every individual response, or I can look at the summary of responses. And the same is going to be true of the quizzes. Here it gives me a summary, a little bit different summary certainly than what the survey looks like, because it gives me some very useful data in terms of average, in terms of median, in terms of range, what question are students missing, what period are they from. This kind of information really comes in helpful with formative assessments and that sort of thing. Those were how I used Google Form quizzes a lot when I was in the classroom, where with just quick interim assessments, formative assessments, things like that, that I thought were very useful. Okay, and it'll tell you, what percentage of the responses were correct, all that sort of thing. I can also look at individual responses here, and I can take a look at test 1 and see what they got, and I can obviously go through and I can look at everyone's individual response, and that's certainly a valid way to analyze everything as well. So I'm going to take those both back to summary. The other option, of course, is that you can put these into a spreadsheet, which has numerous benefits, too many to elaborate on here, that you can filter data, you can sort, you can do all kinds of things so that you can really manipulate the data the way you want. There will be for those of you doing the full 3-hour professional development course, there will be a section upcoming on Google Sheets. In fact, you may have already done that depending on what order you worked in. I have several options here before I show you that real quick. I guess I should backtrack before I get on the spreadsheets. I want to cover this very quickly. You can get an email notification for new responses. I forgot to mention that. So if I want to get an email notification every time somebody submits a response, I can choose that option right there. I could also download them as what's called a CSV file, and I could then upload them to Excel. I could delete all responses. So if I didn't like my quiz and I wanted to start over with responses, but I wanted to keep most of the questions and change 1 or 2, I could delete the responses, give the quiz again. I could also select a response destination, which is going to create a new spreadsheet, which I'll show you in just a minute. So I won't go into that. The main thing I wanted to show you there was get an email notification for new responses. Okay, sorry I got a little off track there, but to circle back around to the spreadsheet, I can, of course, create a spreadsheet. And when I do that, I can create a new spreadsheet, or I can select an existing spreadsheet. So if I wanted to create a new spreadsheet with all this information, I'm simply going to enter what I want to call it here. So in this case, example survey responses, and then I would click create. If I wanted to put it in an existing spreadsheet, it would show up as a tab or a sheet within the larger spreadsheet. And either way is fine. I tend to like to keep them separated. So I'm going to click create a new spreadsheet here. And so now notice that I have a spreadsheet of all of my answers, and they are now linked. So if a 4th person goes in, it's going to pop up here on my spreadsheet. If a 5th person pops in, it's going to go here on my spreadsheet, and so on and so forth. I can also here set up the option to notification rule. I can notify me any time someone submits a form, or I can do what's called a daily digest. So at the end of the day, it will send me an update of who all has submitted a form. I tend to like that a little bit better than just the option over here to notify me, because if you get an email notification for every person that turns in your form, that can get really obnoxious, can really pollute your inbox. If you just do a daily digest, quick summary, and I can look at it when I come in first thing. That's what I do for my professional development classes. So I know, if somebody signs up every day, I get an email of who signed up. Super easy, super helpful to do that. I like linking the spreadsheet before I do the notification rules. But again, that's personal preference. Some people like to know all of those individual examples are coming into their inbox. So that comes in helpful too, if you like that. And so I can certainly do the same thing with a quiz. And for my quiz, I'll do it from here, which is the same idea. Select response destination, and I'm going. If I choose select an existing spreadsheet, it's going to take me to my Google Drive. I'm going to select a spreadsheet that I want to put in. So let's just say I want to put it in the spreadsheet here, and then I will open that spreadsheet. And now notice that I have Form 1 and Form 2 responses. So they're in the same sheet, they're just on different tabs here. And this, again, it shows me the score, shows me the student name. So if I wanted to enter this into Skyward, right there, 2 columns, super easy. Just go down, put the names. If you had 150 kids in here, for those of you like at middle school or high school, you could sort them by time. You could turn on your filter form. You could go to data, you could put on a filter, and you could filter by time. You could sort ascending, or you could sort descending. You could sort by period number. So let me do that right here. Sorry. Let's turn on the filter here. So if I just wanted to see students from first period, I could uncheck those options, and so I have first period selected, and now I'm going to hit OK, and there I just have the scores from first period. If I want to turn that filter off, I can go to select all, and then I got to realize that my OK button is off the screen there, and there we go, and then I can hit OK. So I now have my responses in one spreadsheet. This can be helpful if you had, if you had like a pre and a post test and you wanted to compare them. That would be very useful. You could look at the scores within the same sheet, not toggle back and forth. You can still set the notification rules from each individual sheet. So you could get notification rules for one or both of the sheets depending on how you wanted to set that up. But those are the options that allow you to edit the data, look at the data, manipulate it, see how you want to analyze that data, see what it can do for you. That's really the kind of the backside of where everything goes. And those spreadsheets should all show up in the same folder where your quiz was created. So notice here's my example quiz, and there's my example survey responses. And remember, within that one, I put the example quiz responses as well. And so I have the responses that are linked here. So in the future, I wouldn't need to go to the form. I could just go directly to the sheet right here, and I can then click on the different tabs and various tabs and manipulate those as needed. So that's kind of the backside of what it does. To really get more about this, you're going to have to watch the spreadsheet portion of either the mini course, watch the mini course on the spreadsheets, or watch the or continue on in the 3-hour professional development course and cover the section on sheets. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, good luck, and thanks for learning some more about forms. I know this video was a little bit longer than normal, but I think forms is one of the really unique things that makes Google a great product for us.